Fact, fantasy, and history have come together to tease the imagination. You be the judge.
Shortly after leaving Bethel in 1993, I was visiting in California on business, and I stayed with Jehovah's Witnesses in Burbank, who had made arrangements for me to see Beth Sarum in San Diego. At the time, the San Diego elders tried to keep the address of Beth Sarum confidential because they claimed that the owner had been annoyed with so many witness sightseers coming by to see the house. Because I had been the researcher on Jehovah's Witnesses history book, the Proclaimers of God's Kingdom book, an exception was made and the address of Beth Sarum was provided. Well, when we pulled up in front of the house, the garage door was open, and we saw about 4 or 5 men inside who were standing around talking and laughing. In appearance, they looked like they belonged to the Hells Angels motorcycle gang as they stood next to their Harley with a beer in a hand. Well, one of the 2 elders in our car group went up to speak to the men and to locate the owner. The owner was one of the group. He was an Asian man. And the elder told him that I was in the car and I was a researcher on the Watchtower's history book. And would it be possible for me and the rest of the group to tour the property? The owner was very nice, and he said, sure. He said, tour the grounds, it would be fine. Well, upon our entering the garage with the rest of the group, the owner and I began to talk about Rutherford. I asked, amongst other things, where was the hillside crypt that the judge was supposed to be buried in before the San Diego County Commission said no. He pointed in the direction where, later on, we saw a small building. And then he asked if I knew where Rutherford was really buried. I said, of course, yes, in Staten Island, New York. He said, no way. He was very emphatic. He said, you are standing on him. I laughed. I looked down. I looked around. We all had quizzical looks on our face, I'm sure. And he said, I mean it. You're standing on the judge. They didn't want him in New York. And so his followers buried him in this garage. The concrete was poured over him. I asked him how he knew. And he said, Jehovah's Witnesses, older Jehovah's Witnesses who were connected closely with Rutherford and participated in the burial, told him after he had purchased the house. Then he pointed in the distance and he told us that when he bought Beth Sarum, there were 7 small cabins located on the property where the judge kept his women. And if we walked over to the area, he said we could still see the foundation slabs of concrete where the cabins were. Well, we really laughed. Well, we were embarrassed. We didn't know what to say, so I changed the subject. I asked him if he would take a minute and show us around. He said, oh no, you all go on by yourselves. Go and look inside the house. I said, oh no, we can't do that. He said, oh no, you go on in, make yourself at home. Oh, we were just delighted. However, we were so stunned at the revelations we had heard, we could hardly stop talking about them, and so we didn't look as carefully inside the house as we should have. I remember it was very spacious. It was a very well-built house. But even in '93, it wasn't modernized. I do remember the bathroom, the kitchen plumbing fixtures. They were beautiful brass, even though they were very old, and they're in good condition. We toured the grounds. We saw the swimming pool and the small building on the hillside that was intended for Judge Rutherford's crypt. It was exciting at that time to see this famous house I had read and heard about for so many years. I thought back then, if walls could talk, just imagine what they would say about the people and events that took place in that house so long ago. All the way back to Burbank from San Diego, we talked and talked about Rutherford, and especially about me standing on his grave, and wondered if it could be possible. We certainly discounted the kind of statements about Rutherford's women. We couldn't believe that. But regarding the grave, I now know that the February 22nd, 1952 awake said that the judge's body was buried on Staten Island, New York, together with Van Amberg's body. No, not the body. I have to say that it was his cremated remains. And then there was Robert Martin and Woodworth's body. So the 4 men are buried in Staten Island. The actual entire burial plot is owned by the Watchtower, and it's 100 feet by 100 feet, and it's located in the cemetery of the Woodrow United Methodist Church. There are absolutely no markers or headstones nor any evidence of any graves on that small piece of land that the Watchtower owns. Interestingly, a friend of mine was visiting Bethel in 1985. He was in a Bethelite's room, and Fred Franz was there too. My friend asked Freddie where Rutherford's body was buried, and he was surprised that Franz replied without hesitation, Beth Sarum. Perhaps by then Franz wasn't worried about the disclosure, and he just didn't care who knew about it. In conclusion, well, the only thing I can say now about the story of Rutherford's grave is to quote the old proverbial saying, "My, how the plot thickens."